Oh, hey there. Oh, this is this is my new merch that I'm selling. Yes, I'm very excited about this. I'm selling merchandise, as I just said, which I'm really happy about. Check it out. The link's in the description. It's a really nice way to support me, and it would really mean a lot to me to see some of you wear it and to know that some of you are wearing it. So thank you so much for all the support so far. You're really making me able to do this. So because of the whole merchandise thing, I thought it would be nice to do something special. So if you post a picture of yourself on Instagram with my merchandise and tag me, I'll give you a shout out in one of the next videos. With or without the picture. If you don't want the picture shown in the video, that's totally fine as well. But I thought it would be something nice to do. So tag me on your Instagram, on your story or something like that, with you wearing the merch, and I'll give you a shout out. Exciting, right? So you get and the shout out and a cool shirt, and you're supporting me. That's a great deal. Anyways, I also want to give a huge thank you to Curtis for creating the original design, and also a huge thank you to Mike for adapting the design to make it possible to put them on t-shirts and sweaters and hoodies and stuff like that. Let's get into the video. I'm going to show you how to create indie guitar melodies, which is really exciting because it will be very useful. You can use the things that I'm going to teach you now to create solos, to create riffs, to create background melodies. It might even help you to create a vocal melody. So very exciting. So let's get into it. Before we can create a melody, we first need a chord progression. Of course, you can also do it the other way around. You can start with a melody, but that's a bit more difficult, and I think a lot of times in indie music, the artist first begins with a chord progression and then creates a melody on top of that. So, what I thought would be nice is to do a chord progression in G. To create a chord progression in G, as you might remember, you first need to write the G scale down, as you can see here, over here. And then you're going to layer notes on top of each other to create chords, which looks like that. So we're really doing 2 times 2 steps. So for the G chord, we start with the G, then go 2 steps further to the B, and then go 2 steps further to the D, and we have a G chord. And the same, of course, for the A chord. We start with the A, go 2 steps further to the C, and then again 2 steps further, we add the E. And then we have an A minor chord. So that's how to do that. If that sounds weird, check out my last video. There I explain in total detail how it really works. But this is what we're going to use now, the G major scale, the G major chords, you could say. And of course we can then also play more jazzy chords like a G major 7 or an E minor 7 or an A minor 7. However, I thought for this chord progression we will keep the G just as a normal G, so no minor 7 or dominant 7, so G. Then the 6th one, which is an E minor, but then an E minor 7 I thought would sound nice, so. And then an A minor 7, which is the 5, which is the 2, and then a D7, which is the 5, which is like a thing that's used a lot by Make the Marker, going back from the 5th chord to the 1st chord, so we're doing that as well now. And not only Make the Marker, it's really, it sounds really nice. The 5th chord really resolves very nicely into the 1 chord, so that's why we're doing that as well. So, and of course we also need a strumming pattern, which will be this. Which might be going a bit quick, so I will show you now in detail really how I'm doing it. So the strumming pattern will be I'm also doing this small pull off over here, you don't have to, so first 2 downstrokes and then so, and then exactly the same, so, and then like that. That will be the chord progression and strumming pattern that we're going to work with to create a melody. So now that we have a chord progression, we're finally ready to create a melody on top of that. And there are really 2 ways that are really used a lot in indie music. Of course, there's lots of ways to create a chord progression, but these 2 are really very useful to create an indie guitar melody and are also used a lot in indie music. So the first one is to really base your melody around the chords of the chord progression, and the other one is really base your melody around the scale of the chord progression. And both are used in different ways for different purposes. However, first let's talk about creating an indie guitar melody with or focus on the chords. It's kind of a country way to do this. Also in blues you can see it sometimes, this way of creating a melody. But what I mean by that is very simple really. It's to create a melody, In this way, we're simply going to look at the chords that we're playing and looking at the notes that we're playing that are in those chords and creating a melody based around those notes. So, for example, for the G chord, it exists of a G, A, B, and then D. We know that because we've learned some things about chord progression by now, and also you can look at the chord and you will find those notes in the chord. How we could then create a melody is to really try to find all the places on the guitar that have a G and a B and a D. So you have a G over here and also over here. And however, there's a bit of an easier way to figure out a nice melody. It's really by looking at the different finger positionings of the chords. What I mean by that is that you can play a G chord, for example, over here. You can also play it over here. You can also play it over here. You can also play it over here. You can also even play it over here. Lots of different places to play a G chord. And it's really useful to learn these different places to play chords. I also talk about this on my video that's called Playing in the Guitar the Chords. But yeah, there's lots of places to play a chord. You can also look those up. So when you're playing a G chord, you can look up online all the different places where you can play a G chord. However, also you will really quickly get the hang of it, because as you might notice, the different finger positionings are really the same for every chord, only you play it at a different place. So by that I mean you can play a G over here and a G over here, but a G sharp, which is a half note higher, you can play over here and over here. It's the same finger positioning, only at different frets. So once you know that a bit, and also by playing a lot of songs, you will learn these different finger positionings for chords, these different places to play chords. However, we're going to use those different finger positionings to create a melody. You will see this a lot used, for example, by Boy Pablo. Also Mick DeMarco used this a lot. For example, when we're playing a G in the chord progression, we could play notes of that G chord. So we could do this, which are basically two notes of the G chord. However, it might go a bit lost in the chord because you're playing at the exact same notes, not higher or lower, so you might not hear it so well. But of course we can also use, for example, this G chord. So we could do while the other guitar's doing this. We could also use this chord to create a melody. So something like that. While the other guitar's playing a G here, we are basically playing a G over here, but then using single notes to create a melody. That's really the idea. And of course, what I will also explain later on in this video, you don't exactly have to use these notes of the chords. You can also add some notes to it. That's totally fine. But now really for teaching purposes, and because you will really see it this literal really in indie music, I will show it like this. So for example, when we're playing a G chord in the chord progression, we could do something like that, or something like that. We're really using notes from the G major chord, because when I was playing something here, I'm using this G chord to create something, and over here I'm using this one. So it is quite literal. It will almost sound nice because you're really playing the exact same notes that you hear in the chord progression, but it is used a lot. And you will also find a lot of times that in indie music they will slide to the first note of the melody. So something like that. Also quite sometimes this, I don't know what it's called in English, but this tremolo bar or whammy bar, this, you can also use that if you'd like. So that's a way to create a melody. Of course we're going to do this for every chord. We're going to use some notes of each chord to create a melody. So first we have the G, we can do something like this, as I showed you. Then we have an E minor. And what's so interesting and nice about the E minor, and you might also be able to see that in the notes, is that the E minor 7 and the G almost have the exact same notes in the chord. And that's because they are the relative minor key. The E minor is the relative minor key of the G major. And what the relative minor really means is that for this example, the G major scale and the E minor scale have the exact same notes in them, only in a different order, you could say. They start from a different place. But it also makes that the G major chord and the E minor 7 chord almost have the exact same notes in them. And we can really make use of that, because by that we can really keep on playing the same notes, because this fits in the G chord, so, but it also fits in the E minor 7 chord over here, so for this part we can really stay doing this like that. Then we go to the A minor 7, and there's also an A minor 7 over here, so we can use those notes, so something like that. Of course there's also an A minor over here and also an A minor over here, so you can also use the notes at those places. Totally up to you, I'm just giving an example right now. And then we're going to the D7 in the chord progression, and there's also a D over here, which is really this one, but then also adding these notes to it that also fit in the D major chord. So when we really connect those things together, we have something like this. Something like that. And of course you can, this is just an example, so you could also do something like using the G chord over here and the A minor chord over here, and then using the A minor chord over here and the D over here, so then you would have something like that. And it's quite literal really what we're doing now, so you could also add notes to the chords, and it's really nice to use the notes of the G major scale. So for example, in this example where we're using this G to create a melody, we could do something like, you're really free to also add, for example, the C to it, so something like that. And then when we're going to the A minor, we could also use the D note, because the D note is also in the G major scale. But to really know when or how to do that, we really need to look at the scale as well, which we're going to do now, because as I said, the second way really to do this, or the second way to look at it, is by looking at the scale. And what I just taught you about the chords, this technique is really used a lot as a background guitar melody, or also in riffs. Yeah, sometimes in solos, but that's used a lot more in like old school blues or country, this way of playing a solo like that. But what I just taught you about the chords is really used a lot, again, as a background melody for the verse or the chorus or the intro. Now, really creating a melody by looking at the scale is used a lot more in solos, and also to follow the vocal melody, and also sometimes to create a riff. What this really means is that we're still going to create a melody in the key of G, which we just did because we were using the G chords to create a melody, but now we're really more looking at the scale. So we're really trying to find a place on the guitar where we can play the G major scale and then use this scale to create a melody. So you can play, I talk about this in my video on scales, check that out and you know more about where to play those. But for example, you can play the G major scale over here. Like that. You can also play it over here. Like that. But there's also really something interesting now, which I talked about earlier in this video. It's the relative minor. And this is a technique that's really used a lot, not only in indie music, but also a lot of times in blues and in rock. It's really, some people find it overused. What it really is, what I'm trying to tell you, is the relative minor of the major scale. So by that I mean, I also talk about it in my video on scales, check that out. It is that each major scale has a relative minor. I also talked to you about it in the chord section of this video. So for the G, as I told you, it's the E minor, is the relative minor key. So of course now you might be wondering, how do I find this relative minor of my major scale? So for example, when you're playing something in C, you want to know the relative minor. There's really an easy way to do this on the guitar, which I tend to use, is that you first play the root note of the major scale that you're in. So for example, when we're in C, you play the C note and then you go 3 steps down, and then you have the relative minor. Simple as that. So for example, when you have the G here, we go 1, 2, 3, like 3 half steps down, and then you have the relative minor. So for G, the relative minor is E minor. I'm sorry if some things maybe might sound a bit difficult, but check out my other videos on the subject and those things will really make more sense. But for now, I hope you understand that the relative minor of a major scale really has the same notes, only really starting from a different place. So for example, the G major scale has the same notes as the E minor scale, only for the G major scale you start at the G, of course, and for the E minor you start with the E note really to play the scale. We're going to use this idea of a relative minor scale to create a melody. So while our chord progression is in G major, we're going to create a melody in E minor. That's a very good question, and also a bit difficult to answer, I think. You really, when you're playing on the E minor scale instead of the G major scale, they are the same notes, but you tend to focus on a bit other notes when in the E minor scale than in the G major scale. You might, the finger positioning is also a bit different, so you're using the same notes, but you might end on different notes, or you might emphasize some notes less or more than the other. Especially when you're playing in a pentatonic scale. And now I'm even going to make it more difficult, but it isn't. I also talked about this in my video on scales, so check it out. But as I just said, the relative minor of G major is E minor, but we can also play the E minor pentatonic scale, which is used a lot, again, also in indie music. Some people think it's overused. Well, who cares? Badass. But what that means really, the pentatonic minor scale, is you're playing the minor scale but only playing 5 notes of the minor scale. And of course that translated to guitar sounds like this. You will find lots of people play this, experts to beginners, but that is the minor pentatonic scale. Of course this is the one for the E minor because we start from the E. For the A minor, for example, we start from the A over here and you do the exact same thing but only from a different place. So relatively the finger positioning is totally the same for every minor pentatonic. Of course the notes in the minor pentatonic, which are E, G, A, B, D, E, again you can play those all around the guitar, so you can also play it over here. Something like that. So yeah, but we're going to use this relative minor pentatonic over the major chord progression, because that's what we're doing. We're playing the major G major chord progression and we're going to use the E minor pentatonic to play something on top of that. We're really going to use this scale as I just showed you. The relative minor pentatonic of the G major, which is an E minor in this case. Or it's always an E minor for the G, but for each major scale, of course, it's a different relative minor scale. But we're going to use those notes. Now, how to use those notes is really all about practicing and not trying to improvise using those notes. You can really play a chord progression and then try to come up with a melody that you think sounds nice. This technique that we're using now, of using the relative minor or really using the scale or using a scale to create a melody, is used a lot in solos and also to create riffs and also to play along with the vocal melody of the singer. So for example, in the Stars Keep on Calling My Name by Mac DeMarco, you really hear very clearly that the guitar is playing the exact same notes as the vocal singer, as the vocals. So you will also then find, of course, that the vocals usually follow more the scale than the chords. I thought what we could do now is create a melody that could also be a vocal melody. I can't sing, so I won't, but you can imagine that this could also be something that the vocalist is singing, or something that's close to a vocal melody. Now, to come up with this, we can just play the chord progression, try a couple of things out, and we will hopefully come up with something that we both like. Of course I secretly figured something out before, so I'm going to show you what I came up with. But I came up with this by really playing the minor scale a couple of times, trying to find out what sound nice. Of course you can also look closely to the chords and then look at which notes you're playing in the melody and then try to, make something nice, but you can also do really part of this by ear. So I came up with something like this. Something like that. I thought it sounded a bit nice. I'm really more focusing on the scale right now. As you can see, I might hit some notes that really fit well on the chord, but not always. So I'm doing something like this. And I'm also doing this bend. You will also find this in a lot of Make the Marco songs, where he basically just bends a note at the end of a melody, so something like that, or something like that. And then I'm doing the same thing again, so and you might now notice that I'm really going out of this finger pitch thing. But you have to imagine that these notes that you're playing over here, this minor pentatonic, you can also play those notes all around the fretboard, just like you can play the chords at a lot of different places. So this minor pentatonic scale also, you can also move it upwards. Again, to really know where to play those notes, just try to learn a lot of scales, watch my video on scales there. All the stuff might become a bit more clear, but so I'm using those notes as well, and I'm doing this. You can also find it in a lot of Make the Marco riffs that I'm really almost playing a G chord over here, even though the chord progression is probably playing an A minor or a D. But as long as it sounds nice, it's all good, really. It's all about making a song that you think sounds nice, not about if it really fits in the chord or fits in the scale. If you came up with a melody that doesn't fit in the scale at all but sounds nice, that's totally fine. This is just really a framework to work in, and we can also of course try to step out of it. We can try to play notes that aren't in the E minor pentatonic or even in the G major scale, and then we can come up with some nice things as well. So this is really just a framework to begin with and to try stuff out with, and also a way to step out of it, because when you really know what you're doing, you can also really try to find out what you can't really do but still sound nice. If that makes sense. So for example, we could also do something like this. So now I'm playing this note, this A sharp, but the A sharp isn't in the G major scale, not in the E minor scale. But it still sounds, I think, a bit nice. This is, by the way, quite a note that is still used sometimes in solos. It's a bit of a blue note, but however, it doesn't fit in the scale, but it still sounds nice, which is an example of what you can do. So the first thing we did was really try to stay in the chords, and it sounded nice, it was very clear, but of course it might sound nice as well to step out of that. And maybe to step out of it, it might be nice to play a bit more on the scale or combine the two. So we could also combine these two ideas that we have, these two melodies really, and we would have something like this. Something like that. Of course, these are just examples. Really try to play around with what I'm teaching you now. Try a different scale, try different chords, try a different melody, and you will get the hang of it. Also, what I'm teaching you now is also very useful, not to only create a melody, but also to figure out indie guitar melodies of songs that you like. It's a technique that I really use a lot. For example, when you have a Make the Marco chord progression or something by Boy Pablo, and one guitar is playing something like and you hear a melody that sounds very nice fitting in the chords, It's a very useful way to try to look at different places. For example, in this example, he's playing a D major over here. You can also play a D major over here. And then try those notes out. So, and a lot of times you're actually correct, because you will see that these artists really use this concept. It might be a coincidence, so they might just do it all by ear. They might have one guitar playing this, and the other guitar might try to figure out, oh, what sounds nice? Oh, this sounds nice, and I'm going to use that. Might be as well that it's a very conscious thing, like we're doing now, so that the first guitar is doing this and the second guitar is just thinking, oh, where can I play a G chord as well? Over here, let's do something with that. Something like that. You can get totally creative with that. The last tip really that I wanted to give you, so you can create melodies using this concept that I've taught you now. You can figure out songs, but you can also try to improvise. So try chord progression, look up the scale online or something, or try to figure out the scale by yourself on the guitar, or look at my video on scales, and then try to solo over your chord progression. It's really what I really learned by doing that a lot is that it will really suck in the beginning, but at a certain moment you get like a vibe. You will feel which note sounds nice when playing a scale in a chord progression, when playing a melody. So, for example, especially when you're playing like the E minor pentatonic that I just taught you, a lot of these notes really almost always sound nice with each chord of the relative major key chord progression. So the chord progression that I just taught you, all these notes from the E minor key pentatonic sound nice. So it's a very approachable key, but try different keys out, look them up online. I really hope to give you like a base idea to work further with. Of course, what I'm teaching you now is not everything about guitar melodies, but it is really something I hope that you can build upon and that is useful to you and that you can use, as I just said. Okay, it was a long video again. Thank you so much for the support. I really hope this was as clear as the last video. If it isn't, let me know in the comments and I'll try to help you out. Also, again, check out my other videos in the guitar theory. They might help a lot as well. And then you can come back to this video to try if everything makes sense again. Yeah, thank you so much for watching. I love you all. Also check out the merchandise website, and I love you for more. The links in the description. And I really hope to see you the next time. Also let me know if you want more of this indie guitar theory stuff, or if you just want some music song lessons again. Let me know. Thank you so much for watching.